Magic reveals itself to those who remember where to look for it. This is Magic Hour, and I'm your host, Taylor Paige. Welcome, everyone, back to Magic Hour. This is your host, Taylor Paige.
Hello, everyone. This is Claire, your producer. Thank you so much for joining us.
I am so excited to discuss all things spirit babies today. We have the amazing Emily Green, known as Emily the Medium, who specializes in spirit babies. So we're going to get deep in with her soon. Spirit babies are an interesting one. I've had quite a few really distinct experiences with them in my career. I remember one time very early on in my career when I was still only reading for people based off of friend referrals. So years and years ago, I connected with a friend of a friend who I didn't know anything about because she was from another town. And her spirit baby came to me. It was the first time I had ever spoken to a spirit baby, and I didn't quite even know what was going on at the time. And her spirit baby said, hey, she's going to get pregnant with me soon. And when I said that, and it felt like a boy. And when I said that to her, she was like, that's impossible. I struggled to get pregnant with my first child, and I'm not even trying right now. She's like, I'd be open to having another baby, but I'm not even trying, and it's really hard for me to get pregnant. Her spirit baby continues and says, well, she is going to get pregnant with me, and I want her to know that they're going to be scared that I have a health issue when I'm born, but it's just digestive problems. And that's the reason I'm going to cry so much, is that there's some digestive problems. I don't want her to worry about me. And I was like, okay, I was telling her all of that. And then the last thing this spirit baby said was, and I'm going to come through at a really important time for her. It's going to be a really significant time that I come through. So fast forward, she gets pregnant, like maybe a month later or a month and a half later, with this baby boy. Her pregnancy, I think this was in 2019 when I read for her. Her pregnancy happened really early 2020. And then her maternity leave, she was a nurse lined up with protecting her from the front lines of COVID. The baby's timing, the pregnancy, like basically was like, nope, you're going on maternity leave. And she wasn't in the hospital during that really chaotic time. Then the baby was born and he was crying and crying and crying. And they were so scared something was wrong. And it turned out to be gas and digestive issues, and everything was fine. So everything turned out the way this spirit baby told me it would. And it was so interesting to me because at this time I wasn't even doing mediumship yet. Well, apparently I was, and I didn't know it. I was just connecting with angels, and I didn't realize what was happening at the time. But this spirit baby little boy gave me such a gift, because everything he said was validated and beautiful evidence that he really came through, which, being pretty early on in my career, gave me a lot of confidence in myself. So I looked to that little spirit baby as such a little angel baby that helped me a lot in my development too.
That's so incredible. And also what a beautiful reassurance for this mother when the health issues were going on, that she had some sort of clue to hook into from your experience with her. And also just for you on your path as a medium to have this connection and to have it be so validated. It was like a little nod, I feel like, from the spirit world to be like, this direction, please.
Yes, absolutely. Sometimes the spirit baby waits for the mom to be ready for them. Oftentimes they wait for the mother to be ready for them in a way that requires their deeper surrender, release of perfectionism, opening, and they guide the mothers through the exact spiritual lessons or experiences they need to be ready for the sacrifices and intensity that motherhood brings. And I'm not a mother myself to a baby, just a little fur baby named Ronaldo. So I can't speak to what that experience is, but I do know from speaking with spirit babies that they're getting their moms ready sometimes for the spiritual lessons that will be conducive to the motherhood journey. Our chapter before we have a baby is mostly about ourselves, our own development, how we love ourselves. Sometimes our soul has like a couple more things it needs to go through before we're ready for that like devotion. Not to say our lessons ever end. If anything, we learn so much more even on the motherhood journey, but sometimes it's just good to have that self-reflection time, and everything works out for a reason in that way. Even if we don't see it yet, there's a bigger design that's going on with how, the when, the why, all of those things.
That's so beautiful. It reminds me of something my mom used to tell me, actually. I have an older brother, and in between my brother and I, my mom had several miscarriages. And when I was younger, I didn't really grasp what an intense experience that is for women and their partners. But what she would always say about it is that she said, you know what? You just weren't ready yet. You weren't ready to come down yet. And the timing wasn't right. And so it really made me think of what you just said, and not even just for like the mother's journey, but I always felt like it was also about the timing of my journey, that maybe there were some other souls that I needed to link up with and connect with on my path. And so I needed to time it and come down at the right time so that we would be on the same timeline journey together. And I think that's just such a beautiful, comforting idea to think about with our journeys of motherhood and parenting and timing, that just because something doesn't show up right now doesn't mean it's not going to show up. It just might not be the right timing. And how beautiful to think that wouldn't we rather it show up in the right timing than force it now when it has a more divine timeline than we can even imagine.
That's such a good point. So often with the things we want in this world, we only think about how it affects us, our timeline, what we want to happen, but expanding that idea to what about the other souls you're meant to interact with? And what about a soulmate connection that maybe needed to be a little bit older and like wait for you to come in? Like there's so many other threads of the bigger picture that spirit, our angels, guides can see that we can't. And so I think letting go of the reins a little bit and just being like, if it's meant to be, it will be. And in the timing, it's meant to be. And I'm just here to show up with love and self-love and grace and trust. And that's like really all we could do.
Indeed. Trust and surrender.
Trust and surrender, two key words that basically we've been leaning into since 2020.
Still working on that one.
Yeah, still working on that. And the other thing I wanted to say, lastly, before I introduce our guest with spirit babies, is that so many people in this community have written to me saying, I feel a baby around you. I feel like you're going to get pregnant. I feel like your mom's going to come back in through your baby. Like so many people have said stuff like that to me. On the one hand, I think it's really sweet. And on the other hand, I'm like, don't rush me. I'm not ready yet. But I think it's really interesting too, how some people dream of other people's babies. And I have a friend like that who I call her a fertility witch, which is just my label for this brand of intuition, which is kind of knowing when people will get pregnant, knowing if it's a boy or a girl. Like some people just have that knowing. And I'm like, you are a fertility witch. And some people just have that.
What a cool skill. What a cool extra perk of this journey to be tapped into that, just like Emily is. I mean, so excited to hear everything she has to say.
Yes, so let's now introduce our guest, Emily Green, known professionally as Emily the Medium. She is a highly acclaimed psychic medium who specializes in supporting families to connect to the energies of their children or their spirit babies at all phases of their journey, whether they're struggling with fertility challenges in the preconception phase or while they're pregnant. In addition, Emily also supports families in raising their sensitive children and helping them to acclimate to Earth, as well as helping individuals understand and master their innate intuitive abilities. Cannot wait to share this conversation with you guys. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We like to start the interview by asking you what your big three are, astrology-wise.
Yes, thank you so much, Taylor. Very happy to be here. Excited for this conversation with you. I love that question, and I asked that question at the beginning of my podcast too. So I am a Sagittarius sun. I have a Gemini moon, and I'm an Aries rising.
Oh my gosh. Okay. We are birds of a feather flocking together because we both asked the same question at the top of our podcast. I'm a Sagittarius moon, not sun. I'm an Aries rising. And so you're a full moon baby, right?
Yes, I am. I am. Yeah, I was born. It was just before the peak of the full moon. I was born on. Yes.
Yes. And they say people born at the full moon have a heightened sense of intuition. It's interesting because I'm a new moon baby. I was born like right at, because I'm a Scorpio sun, Sag moon, like the moon just moved in to Sag. So, or I guess I'm technically waxing, but whenever I look it up, it's like, no, new. So the other question that we like to ask right off the bat, which is going to be perhaps a whole episode worth of information for you as the guest specifically, is how does your intuition show up for you?
Oh, great question. Well, it's certainly changed over the course of my life. I think when I was younger, my intuition was how it was showing up for me was very subtle, and it would come a lot through dreams. Actually, I would often get dream messages for either myself or for other people close to me. It still happens that way, but most of it is sort of in my waking life now. So I would say today it comes in a blend, in a blend of messages through my body and through my emotions, my feelings. I think I also mostly get my intuitive messages sort of just as understandings, as knowings, and sometimes just as like a dialogue with my higher self, where I'll ask a question and I'll be able to receive the answer through sort of my connection to my higher self or my spirit guides, whatever you want to call it. So yeah, that's how it's at right now. I mean, it's definitely changed. I think it's been fun to see as I've began to do the work that I'm doing in the world more and more and more, how my own personal experience of my intuition has changed and shifted. And I think it's always changing. Different days bring different ways of receiving messages for myself, but that's kind of where it's at right now.
I love that. And that not overly labeling or identifying with one way our intuition shows up is so important because it is a constant evolution and it mirrors our growth and our consciousness day to day. And I think your experience is a semi-common one of it starting in the dream world when all of our defenses are lowered and our guides can actually get our attention and we're not busy, go, go, go. And then as you co-created it more in your conscious awareness on the day-to-day waking life, it was less necessary for it to come through the world of dreams. And I had a very similar experience to that.
Did you?
Yes.
What was your experience? I'm curious to hear your experience.
My experience was I was so closed up and scared when I started. I was so clairsentient and I would feel presences in the room with me. And it made me so scared because I couldn't see them. I didn't know what was going on. I could just feel them and I would feel them watching me. And I was just getting like more and more scared because I didn't have answers. And I believe that spirit is pure love, but I didn't have the language or the understanding. And so I was very afraid. And so then from that fearful place, I started having dreams. My chart is very eighth house heavy. Like almost everything is in the eighth house in my chart. I had a dream my grandpa was going to pass. I had a dream my grandma was going to have dementia. And I just kind of would dream these really intense, scary things that completely closed me up intuitively. And then it was the process of peeling back the layers, understanding myself and finding the gifts in the shadow.
Yeah, that's amazing. We have got lots of astrological similarities. I also have quite a few planets in the eighth house. I have Jupiter there, I have Pluto there. So I'm with you.
Yeah, I have my sun, moon, Mercury, Venus, all in the eighth.
You have a stellium. You have a stellium in your eighth house.
I do.
Wow.
I know. It's a lot to carry, but also beautiful if you can find the blessings in it and find the power in it and not stay too attached to anything because you're constantly transforming and growing.
I know that life well. I'm with you on that. Amazing.
Yeah. So I'm so curious how you began to specialize in spirit babies because you're a medium, but then I think this work is so important and so needed. And how did you find that specialty in spirit baby communication?
Love this question because I love telling the story. It was still one of the most magical, defining moments of my practice, of my career. So As you said, I was practicing as a medium for a handful of years. That's how I trained. That's how I began. That's how I opened my practice. I was also doing some energy healing work, but primarily was working with mediumship. And so that's kind of how I showed up to readings expected. That's what I was always expecting was going to happen, is as I was working with somebody, I expected that I was going to connect with the energy of their loved ones in some way, shape, or form. And so I came into a session with this, it was just an average day. This was in 2018. And I came into a session with a woman, and she just said that she was there looking for clarity. She didn't bring it forward right away that she was looking to connect with anyone in particular. She was just like, I'm looking for clarity. I was like, great, we can do that. So I started to tune in for her, and I saw this image of this little girl. Basically, she looked like she was about 3 or 4. I could see her dress. I could see the detail on the dress, the shoes, her hair color, her eyelashes, everything. So I'm like, great, we're working with the energy of a child who is in spirit. So I'd start to describe this spirit person to her, and expecting that she would know who I was talking about. And I was describing her to her, and she said, I have no idea who you're talking about, which is fine, because we get that sometimes. And then we kind of troubleshoot, as you know. It's like, okay, how is this person connected to this individual? Is it maybe through a friend or another extended member of the family? And we try and find the connection. So we're trying to find the connection, and nothing is happening. And so basically I went back to this little girl, and I said, we're stumped and we need your help. And she said, ask my mom about her miscarriage. So I was like, okay, she's saying that she's your daughter. But then I was kind of thinking in my mind, like, wouldn't she know if she had a daughter that passed away? But it made more sense, and this was connected to a miscarriage. So I asked her, and she said, yeah, I did have a miscarriage. It was about 6 months ago at the time that I was talking to her. I think it was actually more like a year. And she said, that's actually the main reason that I came to you today, is because my husband and I are trying to get pregnant, and we had that miscarriage, and we haven't been able to conceive our next child. She already had a son. And so it was kind of, I didn't have time to process it in the moment, because I was just sort of like, okay, we got to work with this. I have to work with the spirit. I've got to work with this little girl. We have to figure out what's going on. So started working with her, and basically she wanted to create a healing for her mom following the miscarriage that she had. And so in order to help her mom call in the next soul of the child that wanted to come in, she said, it's not me, it'll be someone else. There's another soul who's coming in, but in order for you to conceive him, basically we had to create this healing together first. And so we went through a process, and we did that, and we exited the session, and I kind of was like, what just happened? That was crazy. It was not anything that I was expecting to happen. Again, like I said, I had my kind of personal expectations just sort of blown out of the water. So in just following that client, 3 months after that session, she got pregnant with her son, who's now here and happy and healthy, and they have a beautiful life and a beautiful family. But that was the healing that was needed for this mother in order to conceive her next child. And so following that session, I thought that was just a one-off. I was like, oh, that was just a fluke. It was just a coincidence. That'll probably never happen again. And literally every single session after that was like, the person had a miscarriage 40 years ago, and they wanted to create healing around it. Or then they wanted to connect to the baby that was connected to that pregnancy. Or it just went on and on and on. Every person that I saw, this is the theme that it was following. So eventually I sat down in meditation. I was sitting down in meditation lots, trying to understand what was happening in my practice, because I was like, this is not what I thought I was going to do. And, basically what I got back was there's much help needed in order to get these souls onto the planet right now. And that's where we need your focus to be. She said, like, basically lots of people are leaving their bodies, and there's still needs help. Those souls still need help. But we also need you to help with the souls who are trying to enter bodies right now. They need help, and we need you to do it. And so I was like, okay, let's do this. And pretty much that's been my practice ever since. I really kind of claimed it in 2019. And ever since then, that's been the focus of my practice.
That's amazing. And I find that the spirit world is just so beautiful and intelligent. And I find that for periods of time, people with similar stories start to come repeatedly. Like same as you, clients will stack up with the same type of loss or the same type of tragedy. For me, it's not necessarily spirit baby related, but it is spirit being like, this is where you're needed. Your unique frequency is needed here. And so I'm wondering, do you have an affinity with children and babies naturally? And why do you feel like spirit chose you for this work?
I think there's a couple different reasons why this has become my practice. First of all, I was the child that was incredibly sensitive and couldn't really relate to my peers and couldn't sleep pretty much ever. And I was very sensitive. And I feel like my parents did their absolute best, but I think on the best days, they didn't really know what to do with me. They were like, what is this sensitive little being and how are we supposed to support her? And so I think that is part of it, that I have an innate understanding of what it is like to be a brilliant, intelligent soul in a little tiny baby child body and trying to figure out how to interface with the world and remember who I am and remember what I'm here to do. And so I think that's part of it, is I really have a deep understanding and a deep compassion for children. You know, as a child, I felt really frustrated a lot because I felt like I knew I was here for something important, but I didn't know what it was. I didn't know how to do it. I didn't have the tools to do it. And so I think that that's part of it. I think the other part is definitely I've always been connected to children. I mean, when my little cousins, when I was, I was like trying to babysit them. I was like 4 years old, and my parents were like, "Yeah, you're not quite there yet. We don't know if we can give you that responsibility." I just desperately wanted the responsibility to care for my little baby cousins and to watch them. And I've been literally since I was 10, like at the second that I was deemed old enough to be able to care for children, I was a mother's helper. I was going to all of the homes of my mom's friends who had young children and taking care of them while their mothers were napping and showering and doing all these things. I just loved it. I loved being around children. There was just always so much magic that they brought into my heart and into my mind. I loved their presence. I loved their curiosity. It just always made me feel something, made me feel something. So I think that those are that's part of it. I think those are two of the big reasons that I think I'm doing what I'm doing now.
I love that. And I think that empathy with children who feel not heard, not seen, not understood is such a beautiful puzzle piece for you to be this channel for them, to be this voice for them. I think that is so, so beautiful. So I put a little thing up on Instagram and I said, hey, I have a really special medium, spirit baby medium coming on the pod. Send all your questions. And one of the most prevalent questions that I got was, how do I know I have a spirit baby with me? And also, how do I know it's not just a spirit guide? And I know spirit babies can be a form of spirit guide, but how do you know it's a spirit baby?
Yes, great question. So what I'll say, I'll speak to this more specifically in a moment, but what I will say is that, because a lot of people ask me that question too, how do I know if I have a spirit baby, if there's spirit babies around me, if I'm meant to have children? There's a lot of different questions I think that can branch out from that question. What I will say in my experience and what I've learned and what I've heard is that there's quite a extensive waiting list or intense desire to be on the earth plane, especially now. It's kind of like everybody wants tickets to the show and are really looking for definitely, looking to come into families who are going to really support them and their mission and nurture them and love them and really kind of help them remember who they are. And something that I think is important is preserving our children's enlightenment. They come in fully enlightened and connected to these realms that they've just arrived from. And they're really looking, I find, to preserve that and to not have to lose that and then come back to it. Because I know that was definitely my experience and a lot of people's experience. So most people, I have never met somebody that doesn't have a spirit baby energies connected to them. That's my experience. And I think that's because, like I said, I think everybody wants a ticket to the show right now. And if there even is a foundational, even just a thought, even just a curiosity of what would it look like for me to have children, or maybe I'll have children one day, or when I meet the right partner, then I'll have children, I find that there are energies connected to that individual. So, sometimes some are closer than others, right? Some people's spirit baby energy, if they're not close to incarnation, they might not be super communicative. We might not feel them a lot. We might not even know they're around. But even if that's not happening, there's still a kind of what I would call like a thread or a cord that connects us to them, even in those moments where we're not even sure if we're going to have children, or maybe we don't have a partner yet, or whatever the case may be. So I would say that everybody, at least that I've met at this point, I can say pretty confidently has an energy that is at least considering coming through their family, or they are considering bringing a child through their family. And ways to tell if they're kind of around you, connecting with you, and how to differentiate between a spirit baby and a spirit guide is what I have found is that there is an energetic space that a soul moves into when they are considering or preparing for an incarnation. And that is a different energetic space than what kind of a spirit guide energy would vibrate in. And it's interesting because I've talked to children about this who describe this place. I was just talking to this mother, her daughter was describing it the other day, and she has like a name for it. And she's describing what it was like. She was like, this is where all the babies wait. And this is where I had to go before I became a baby. And she calls the place Iris. That's what she calls it. She calls it Iris. So there's this kind of, there's this vibrational space that is, what I've learned is that is different than maybe another space that kind of a spirit guide energy would typically reside within. And so I think that takes practice of learning how to discern those frequencies. But I also think that it is pretty clear when you're working with an energy that is, you can always just ask, are you, I'm feeling an energy. Okay, great. Is this an energy that is considering an incarnation? Like, are you looking to come through my family in physical form, right? Or are you just hanging around in order to support a specific phase in my life, in order to support conception in one way or another? So it doesn't hurt to ask, and, trusting the answer that you get back as well. It does take kind of practice discerning all the different types of energies, but yeah, that's what I would say. And then just coming back to the other part of your question, which was, how do I know, if an energy is trying to communicate with me? Again, it does take, practice, and you have to kind of learn, just like anything else, just like we would learn our loved one's way of communicating and what kinds of signs or symbols they're sending and so on. It's really the same thing with spirit babies, where it's sort of discovering or discerning their unique type of communication. How are they communicating with you? Are they communicating with you through their dreams? Just as we were talking about earlier, that is actually a really good way, especially if we're not used to receiving different messages in our waking life. They'll come in through a dream, a visitation dream. I have a lot of people who come to me and say, I had a dream I was, nursing a child, or giving birth to a child, or pulling a child up on my chest after birth, or, I was running in a field with this little child by my side and holding their hand. And they say, who is that? Who is that child? And it's like, well, that was a visitation dream. Just as our loved ones can come and have visitation dreams with us like this, so can our spirit babies. So dreams is a big one. But they get creative. Like you said, they're so intelligent. Spirit is so intelligent in all of its different forms and ways of communicating. So they're usually 10 steps ahead, and they're thinking, well, where can I send this sign or this sign? I just had a client the other day. Her sign from her son in spirit is sea turtles. And the other day she was on a walk, and she was going to go one way and then decided to go another way at the last minute. This is key to the story. She goes the other way at the last minute, and she's like, there's this kind of little sort of raised kind of balance beam sort of thing. She's like, I'm going to walk on the balance beam. Starts walking on the balance beam. She looks down, and right where she stopped on the balance beam, there's this little tiny ceramic sea turtle right at her feet. And so I think that sometimes it's subtle like that, right? Where it's like, I'm going to turn this direction. I'm going to look down at this exact moment. I'm going to walk on this balance beam. And then she had already had this sign kind of set up, the sea turtle sign, which is something that we can do, is setting up a sign with the energies of our children. So I think, yeah, they have different ways of communicating. It's all the simplest way to open up those lines of communication is just, like I said, to ask. The same way we can ask discerning spirit guide from spirit baby is just to say, I'd love to communicate with you more. I'd love to understand more about your energy, your personality. Let's start talking. Let's open up a relationship. Let's see what that looks like.
Yeah. And I think I agree so much there's so many different types of forms of spiritual communication and spirit guides. And so setting your intention up top with who you want to connect with is a really important piece of the puzzle. Something I've seen in my own sessions is a feeling of someone going about their life and then quote unquote, out of nowhere having this feeling like, oh, I want to become a mom. I want to have a baby. And to me, that's an indication that a spirit baby is getting closer and closer to you too, where you're like, oh, I wasn't sure if I wanted to. And maybe there's still parts of me that are scared or it's not the right time. But all of a sudden, I just really have this feeling where I want to be a mom and I want to bring a child forward. And I think that can also be a sign that there's a spirit baby that's like sending little subliminal messages to you that it's time now.
Absolutely. Completely. I couldn't agree more. And what I have experienced with that is, yeah, I'll talk to a lot of people who are like, I wasn't sure I ever wanted to be a mom. I was maybe kind of on the fence or this sort of thing. And then exactly like you said, one day they'll wake up filled with this intense knowing or this desire of like, whoa, this is something that's meant for me. I also do see that a lot people who, when they meet their partner that they're meant to have children with, and then it's all of a sudden like, oh, now I want children with this person. It kind of like unlocks something. It's very interesting. And what I have been told also is that definitely the spirit babies are getting closer and closer in those moments. And I've also seen that they form something called a conception bond at those moments when they're like, whoa, I all of a sudden I am filled with this intense desire to be a mom, basically where the spirit baby kind of forms the energetic bridge between the physical world and the spirit world that they're going to kind of travel and spiral down through as they're preparing to enter the womb. So it's like they basically kind of open up that portal, really, essentially. Even if that means that conception is still, let's say, 6 months or a year off, that sort of bridge or that ladder has essentially been created that then allows them to descend when the time is right.
That's amazing. And speaking of meeting the right partners, I've also had situations in readings where someone was in a relationship and her spirit baby came through and was like, this is not my dad. This is not my dad. It's time to leave him. And she said to ask her if her partner ever wants to have kids. And she confirmed, no, he doesn't. And I'm dying to be a mom. And I said, well, there's a little girl here who's saying that's not her dad. And she's a spirit baby guide for you to help you find who her dad is meant to be. And so I'm wondering if you can speak to this about spirit babies, which they all have different personalities and they are so cute. I don't connect with them as often as you, but when I do, I enjoy it because they make me laugh and they're just so blunt. And she was like, this isn't my dad. So can you talk about how spirit babies can also help be like, nope, it's time to move into the direction of the soulmate connection that's meant to bring me through with you.
Yeah, absolutely. They are blunt. You're right, in many different ways. and it's, sometimes people are ready for the information that they're ready for. And so they won't bring it through unless they're ready for it. But I've had people be like, it takes time for that to sometimes process where they're like, whoa, this is the person I thought I was going to spend the rest of my life with. And most of the time, if that is coming up, they already know, they already have a sensation. They already have a feeling like, I think I might not be in the correct relationship here. So definitely, I see this a lot. And I love how you said a spirit baby guide that was sort of meant to bring this person to her ideal partner that then was going to kind of open up to these other energies. And I see this a lot. I think that in some ways, right now, what I'm seeing is that, like I said earlier, these children are really looking for families to come into that are going to be supportive of their evolution and their enlightenment and what they're looking to do here on the planet. And sometimes, that they can sometimes be very picky about that and about where the parents are at as individuals and where they're at in their partnership. And it doesn't even necessarily mean, I've talked to people who spirit babies have said they're not in the right relationship, and nothing necessarily is. Sometimes nothing is wrong. Nothing is terribly out of alignment. They could be like, I like this person. They're a good person, but like you said, maybe they don't want children, or maybe they really want to prioritize other things in their life. And so I think it takes a certain amount of courage and willingness to trust the fact that, okay, there's a change that's needed in order to further me on my path, the path towards my partner, but then also my path towards bringing a spirit baby down and into my world and onto the earth plane. There's a certain amount of courage that's required, but they're really, like you said, again, coming back to the words you use, like a spirit baby guide, they want to help us with that as well. Like they want to lead us in the direction that we are meant to move in order to make that happen. I have a client that has a great story around this. Actually, she was single and had been single for quite a while, and started having like very intense visitation dreams from the spirit of her son. She would always see him. He was like in his early 20s, and that's how he presented to her. And he said, I got to come in. So I need you to meet my dad. And so I'm going to kind of move things along here. Like, we need to move things along. And so he told her exactly what to do. He said, get on this dating app on this day and you'll meet him like very soon after. And the second person that she like swiped yes to, they had this instant connection. They went on their first date like soon after, spent the entire like 12 hours together nonstop, moved in together the following month, and were pregnant 6 months later. So it's amazing how quickly it can happen and how quickly they can make these things happen. If, you know, there's all these other pieces, of course, that had to be aligned. That person had to be available. He had to also get the message at the same time to get on the dating app. He had actually never done online dating before either from his side. And he said he just had a feeling he had to go on the dating apps too, same as her. And they found each other. It was really quite amazing. And now her son is here and he's almost a year old and they're like so happy all together, so beautiful. So I think that if we can lean into the trust of the fact that the energies of our children can see the way that things are maybe supposed to go, and that we can trust them and trust ourselves enough to make a change, they will help orchestrate everything else on the other side of that.
Absolutely. And I love the part of the story that included the future dad also getting the guidance, because some people are asking me in the questions, like, does a spirit baby attach to one person and follow them? And I do feel like there can be primary attachments. I feel like I had that with my mom, but also spirit isn't limited by a physical body like us. So they're simultaneously with us and their future dad giving, or future parent giving the guidance that they need to come together too.
Completely. They're orchestrating. It's coming back to what you said. There's such an intelligence there. And if we can really understand that intelligence is unfolding, and we just have to listen, like really truly we just have to listen and be willing to be flexible and be willing to make changes if necessary, so much magic can happen.
Absolutely. And so this is where it gets really tricky. When somebody is feeling a spirit baby by them, they want so badly to be a mom, and then they're going through fertility challenges. I had a client that I think she literally could not give birth, but kept feeling that vivid next baby that wanted to come through so much. And so can you speak to that disconnection between what we feel in spirit and what our physical reality is? And I know it's such a sensitive and tender topic for so many.
Yeah, a few different angles that we could touch on this from. I think the first thing is that physically speaking, at this time, we have more people experiencing fertility challenges than ever before. Rates are absolutely skyrocketing. And so that's a very real thing. You know, we have these energies who are so strong and so connected to us, and they're trying to find a way to maneuver and to navigate through the physical bodies of us that are maybe needing some extra support in some ways or other. And I think sometimes it's nice to know that can be supported. You know, our physical bodies can be supported in order to support fertility for both men and women. And sometimes it doesn't happen that way. You know, sometimes the physical body is, you know, the egg reserve is diminished, or sperm counts are really low, or these sorts of things. And I think that the spirit babies, from what I've understood, are very much aware of this. They're very much aware of the fact that this is happening, and they are in many ways guiding their parents to the correct sort of changes or supports that could be helpful to supporting physical fertility. So that's one angle. Sometimes they have to choose different routes. So I've seen a spirit baby energy trying to get through parents over and over and over again who are experiencing fertility challenges. This person was having recurring miscarriages, like upwards of 15 miscarriages. And so eventually she said, I can't do this anymore. Like I cannot mentally, emotionally, physically take this anymore. And so she said, you need to find another way. You need to find another way to get through. And basically had a friend volunteer to be her surrogate. and carried her baby and brought her baby here, So I think that they're trying to work with us and trying to find ways to come in when there are barriers or obstacles, trying to make tweaks as necessary. I think that is something important to know, is that, again, like they're looking, they want to be here. They want to be in your family. And so they're going to find a way. It may not always be in the way that we would want, or that we would hope for, or that we would expect. So I think in a way we can stay flexible to the unfoldment. One of the things I like to say is like magic in the mystery. Okay, you've got this beautiful spirit baby and you don't know how they're going to get here. But let's lean into the magic that is present in the mystery and see how they can help you co-create their conception, whether that is through surrogacy or an egg donor or a sperm donor or adoption. There's so many different ways that our spirit babies can use in order to come into a physical body and to come onto the planet.
I love that. And it leads me to what I was going to ask next, which is adoption. Do spirit babies who see the long game from Iris, the spirit babies in Iris seeing the long game, do they know, like, okay, this person that's bringing me into the world can't support me right now. And so I'm going to work with this person who is meant to raise me and foster my light. And so do they attach to adoptive parents in the same way? And how does that work?
Great question. Yeah, I'm actually studying this right now. I'm talking to a lot of people who were adopted or who are adopting to try and understand this better, because I've only worked with adoption a few times, but in the times that I have worked with it seems that there is a contract formed with both the biological parent, the biological mother, and then the adoptive mother or the adoptive parents. And they understand that there's sort of this two-step process of coming in through the biological mother. And then also what's really interesting is they show me that they then guide the biological mother to choosing the correct adoptive parents. And so what I've heard is that, I'm getting goosebumps as I'm talking about this, it's so beautiful, is that the biological mother, they say they are scrolling through the lists and pages of potential adoptive parents, and I had one of them tell me that she saw the adoptive parents and she heard this voice that said, "That's them, choose them." And
chills. Now you're giving me chills.
Yeah, I know, me too. They're everywhere. And so she said there was no other option. She looked at other people, they weren't right. It was them. And so again, coming back to this intelligence where they are orchestrating everything, every detail.
And I think that's so healing for people who aren't in the right circumstances to keep their baby, to know it's okay. This might have been part of a bigger plan, and you brought this baby to earth, and now it will be led to where it's meant to go in a way that you don't have to carry guilt forever about.
Completely. Exactly. And as I've talked to adoptees, 99% of them have said, I met my biological mom and I spent my whole life with my adoptive parents, and I completely understand why my soul did what it did. There's a total acceptance and understanding and love for their biological mother and her willingness to bring this child through in order to allow that child to be with the parents that it really came in to be with.
Absolutely. And so this brings me to another heavy topic, which is abortion. And in my own experiences, I've had, spirit babies come through who it was a choice to end the pregnancy. And people say, like, I feel guilty about this. I carry the guilt for the rest of my life. Like, will the spirit baby come back another time if I'm more ready? And what do you say to people that carry that guilt? Because it's so easy in this day and age to get shamed for it, to feel awful for it. What would you say to that?
Yeah, great question. I think it's really important to talk about this because so many people carry that guilt so intensely and it's very active for them. So I'm going to actually segue into this by telling a story. This was actually one of the second spirit baby experiences that I had after this first one that I told you about. And this woman came to me and she was a referral from another client. And she said, I need you. It's an emergency. I was like, okay. So we got her in and she said, I'm pregnant, but the person that I got pregnant with is not a good person. And I knew that, but I did it anyway. And then this happened and I'm so confused. And what do I do? And I'm pretty sure I can't keep this baby. What do I do? And so I tuned in and this little boy came in and he started talking before I could even have a chance to register what was happening. And he said, tell her not to worry. tell her how much I love her. Tell her I'm going to wait for my other dad. My other dad is going to come back, and then I'll come through him. And don't worry. And I love her, and I'm protecting her. And he basically said, she cannot have me with this person because it's not going to be good for both her and for me. It can't happen. And he knew that. He was completely understanding of it. And then he went on to say that, but the pregnancy still needed to happen because it was a huge turning point in her life of she had known she needed to end this relationship with this individual. But the pregnancy and having this communication with the soul really solidified that for her. And so she was like, she had already been feeling this boy. And so it was really wonderful to connect with her and just hear from him in this way. And so she went on to terminate the pregnancy. And we talked to him again shortly after. And he just said, I'm fine. I'm good. I'm happy. I love her. I'm still very close to her. And I'll be back. He basically said, I'll be back in about 3 years. He said, give me about 3 years. And so then as time went on, she had already had a daughter with her daughter's birth father, who was another person than the person we're talking about here. And they rekindled their relationship. And he went through a great amount of transformation and healing himself. And almost 3 years to the day, about just under 2.5 years, she conceived again. It was a boy. It was the same soul. She felt the connection with him immediately. She knew it was him again. And he was with the dad that he wanted to come through, and shared the same biological father as his sister, which is something that he wanted. So that's just an example of, and I would say that his attitude around a terminated pregnancy is the attitude that every spirit baby that I've ever talked to holds. The energy that they have is complete understanding, complete love, acceptance. There's no shame, no guilt. Sometimes they need a little communication of like, this is what's happening and this is why. But most of the time they know that already, but it's just nice for them to hear, I love you. I want you to come back. It's not the right moment in time. I think I always encourage parents to communicate that to the energies of their children. And just let them know, just opening up that line of communication. But the energy is almost always just fierce protection. Like they want to protect. It's almost like these spirit babies want to protect their parents from taking on any unnecessary shame or guilt around their decision. They're like, I don't want her to hold that. I don't want them to hold that. I don't want them to feel bad. They understand that we have free will. And so if a pregnancy happens, they see it sometimes in another situation. I had another client who had 3 children and was complete and got pregnant and was very scared. She was like, there's no way I can have 4 children. Oh my goodness. And we tuned into the soul, and she was just like, that's okay. I thought I would try.
Oh,
She was like, I just wanted to try and see what you were going to do. And that's okay. She knew it was a chance. There was an opportunity. She knew there was an opportunity, and it's okay if we say no. If we really are, that's the power of being here, is we have our free will and we can use that. And then, there may be a different way. Actually, for this individual, the soul said, that's okay. I had a chance. I still want to be close to you. And so she actually chose another mother that was in this person's sphere, and they're still able to be connected.
I love that so much. And one final thing I want to say, which I've had the same experience with spirit babies that come through after abortion, there's no hate. And what I want to make very clear is that spirit doesn't have the capacity to hate. That's a human emotion. Spirit is all love, and we project our consciousness onto it all the time, but it's really holding a mirror up to our ability to receive unconditional love. And when we project guilt or shame or hate, it shows how we're talking about this to ourselves. And so there's no hate, it's all love. And yeah, I've had like the same type of experience where the spirit baby, it's that same thing, just that protective energy. And I like what you said about reframing it, because sometimes a pregnancy isn't just about having the baby. It's a wake up call. It's a restructure. It's a catalyst for change. It's a catalyst to look at things differently. And so sometimes I feel like we can be really small minded as humans. Like we get pregnant, we have the baby, and that's the point. But there's so many more dimensions to this. What if there's another timeline where that baby did come through, and then another place where it's like everything's happening in a way that's so much bigger than we can understand. And maybe we can just give ourselves a lot more grace in this timeline that we're in.
Completely.
And so I'm just throwing so many heavy topics at you.
Okay. Don't worry. I love it.
But this is such a sensitive topic. And like you said, there's never been more fertility issues than we have now, whether it's our water supply with birth control in it. And there's just so many toxic factors in this world contributing to that have nothing to do with our fault at all. But I want to talk about miscarriages because this is another really tender topic. And I heard Laura Lynn Jackson say something really beautiful about this, and I wanted to hear what you thought. But what she said was sometimes a soul's purpose is only to feel wanted. Like, what does it feel like to feel so wanted and fought for and held? And maybe that soul's purpose wasn't even to come into the world, but just to feel wanted, fought for, and held. And I thought that was such an interesting reframe. But comment on that, but also what do you see with the spiritual side of miscarriages, and do the babies come back?
Yeah, great question. And actually, I was going to segue into that anyway. So it's very organic because I was going to say, just to your point of, like we said, sometimes pregnancies, we get pregnant and then have the baby and they're here. And sometimes pregnancies are for other reasons. They're here, there's a variety of different reasons that a pregnancy may happen and then have to end, whether through termination or miscarriage. So absolutely, I love that sentiment from Laura Lynn Jackson, and I would agree completely and wholeheartedly that not every soul has a desire to experience the entirety of a pregnancy and an entire incarnation. Some are literally feel so complete with 4 weeks with their mother in utero, or 12 or 20 or whatever it is. That's all they require. That's that they're able to get so much of what they need in that time. They're there to experience love for a brief period of time, to feel wanted, like you said. So, and sometimes they can get that. And how beautiful is that they're able to get that in such a short period of time? They're able to feel that love, that excitement, that gratitude, which of course, for us, that's hard. It's like, I felt that and then it got taken away, And what I say to that is that each soul is on a journey. And of course, like you and I were here and we decided to be conceived and come into earth, and we're here, we're alive, right? And that was our choice. That was our journey. And not every soul desires that same path. And so we have to, if we can, to come into a level of respect for the soul's path, and that it's maybe different than what we would want, or that what we would hope for them or for us. And that's not easy. So I think it's something to play with and to experiment with that sensation of what would it look like, or what would it feel like for me to respect the choice of my child's soul to have this brief experience, or have this experience at this time, or maybe they needed more time. I talked to a lot of spirit babies who were like, I'll be back. I just needed a bit more time, or I'll be back because this miscarriage has created a new level of understanding for my parent around XYZ. Like we said, just as terminations can be catalysts for people's healing, so can miscarriages. I see that so often. Like, I had my miscarriage and my life changed. I had my miscarriage and I quit my job because I realized it was sucking my soul. And I started my business because I've always wanted to do that, but my spirit baby gave me the courage in order to do that. So I think there are different reasons for miscarriage, but what I have been told, aside from something that has to do with a physical fertility challenge and maybe that contributing to miscarriage, almost always it's the choice of the soul. They are either making a decision to have a brief experience and then they're complete with that, or they come in to have a brief experience and they plan on returning at some point in the future.
Yes. And to the mothers out there who have experienced that, you never failed anyone. Your spirit baby might have needed something different and it was not your fault. And you giving that spirit baby that experience of feeling wanted and loved for however brief it was such a service.
Completely.
Yeah. So Emily, I'm not implying that you know everything, okay? Because I'm asking you like so many big picture questions. And so if this is something that you say, I don't know, I respect that because we aren't supposed to know everything. But I want to talk a little bit about reincarnation. And so as mediums, you and I both speak to the spirit world, which does feel very different, or not very different, but different energetically than spirit babies. And so, like you said, and I really agreed and appreciated this, they exist on a slightly separate realm. And the way they communicate their information, the things they talk about are just a little different. Like, I feel like spirit babies focus mostly on the parent that we're talking to, whereas past loved ones can talk about all sorts of things and take us in different directions. And, spirit babies can as well. But in the topic of reincarnation, where do you stand with past loved ones in spirit or rejoining the oneness of all? And then saying this slice of consciousness wants to be explored further, and it's going to go into that holding cell iris area and then go in. So where do you stand with that? Because it's so big and quantum, and I don't know if we can even wrap our full mind around it, but would you speak to it a bit?
Yeah, absolutely. I know exactly, you're right. It is so big. And just yesterday, I'll share this because I think it contextualizes what we're talking about very well. I was talking to a woman, she was pregnant and she's preparing to have her child in the next handful of weeks. And so I was talking to the spirit of her daughter, and basically the daughter said, and I'm not like these big proclamations, sometimes I have trouble with them because I'm like, this is going to stick with this person for the rest of her life. She's going to remember this. And this is a big thing to say. But basically the daughter was saying, I'm the spirit of her maternal grandmother. And she was saying, I wanted to come back in through this lineage. It's important for me to do so. I need to be in this same lineage through you. And thank you for saying yes and all these things. And the woman was like, I knew it. Like she knew. She was like, the moment she conceived, she was like, I know this is my grandmother. So, I think that what I have seen, here's what I'll say, is that there seems to be, when a soul leaves the physical body, for every energy, for every soul, it's different what they decide to do, how they decide to spend their time, how much time they decide to take. What I have learned is that fundamentally, the number one goal of the soul is to continue its evolution. The kind of sticking point for the soul is stagnancy. It doesn't want to be stagnant and wants to continue to grow and evolve and move towards ultimately what you said, which is merging back with source. And one of the best ways that we can evolve is through a physical vessel, whether that's on Earth or somewhere else, which is a whole different topic that we probably don't have time for, but that's the best way that it can do that. And so, many energies that I talk to, they say, yeah, I was in a body. Sometimes they'll tell me when and where, and I took a X period of time to rest, restore, to learn, to grow, to teach, to guide, and now I'm ready for an incarnation again, and I'm choosing this incarnation within this family. Sometimes I'll see it as being, this is a soul that has been within that parent's sort of soul family, and they're coming in again to be a part of that soul family in a different form. What I'm seeing more and more often, however, is these energies that are coming from far and wide, who maybe previously actually retired in their reincarnational cycle, that are choosing again to come into the earth plane right now because, like we said earlier, it's a highly coveted time, a highly coveted moment. Everybody wants tickets to the show. And so these energies are kind of choosing families that they're new to. And so I talked to a lot of people who are like, who is this? Like they have one child and they're like, oh, I know her, like we're familiar. There's a past life connection. We know each other. And then they'll have another child and they're like, who are you? I have no idea who you are. Like, where did you come from? I had this one mom and her spirit baby said to her, I dropped out of the sky. And she was like, that's exactly what it felt like. It was like, where did this little being come from? I don't recognize you at all. So, I think that at this present time, more, from my experience, more souls are complete. Like there's this interesting shift happening because there's a lot of souls who are leaving now. There's a lot who are leaving, who have completed their mission and they've actually completed their incarnational cycle. They have no plans on coming back, which then creates more space for these newer energies to come in. There's, a limited amount of bodies, which is sort of funny to think about because the population continues to grow, but there really is like a limited amount of bodies that can come in. And so, or a limited amount of bodies that are available, I should say. And so a lot of energies are leaving in order to make room for these new energies that are coming in. And it feels exciting, and we're getting, I talk about this a lot. We're getting a lot of these like first timer type energies who have actually never been on Earth before, but they want to be here now. It's important for them to be here now. So anyway, those are just a few of my thoughts surrounding like the incarnational cycles and soul types and all these things. I hope it answers your question.
Yeah. And I think there is no one answer for this question. So it's nice to just hear you speak on this. And when a baby comes in reincarnated, do you believe it's still possible to connect with their aspect of self that was that grandmother consciousness on the other side?
Yes,
I agree.
absolutely.
I agree. Because the baby coming in is not your grandmother's consciousness, it's her soul's essence in a new consciousness.
Yes, completely. And that's what I've heard, is that the soul is so, as you said, quantum and multidimensional, and that it can be, there's this sort of piece or part, to put it in kind of a human word, there's this piece of the pie that remains in this spirit space, and then there's all these other aspects that are going out and having experiences in physical forms. But if we wanted to, we could still, like you said, we could still connect. And that was the funny thing. When I was working with this woman yesterday, I was simultaneously talking to her child, seeing her child, and then also seeing the grandmother. I was talking to them both at once, but they were different forms. It was kind of trippy. My mind has expanded so I could hold it, but it was like, it took the woman a minute to be like, wait a second, you're simultaneously talking to my daughter, who is my grandmother, who, it was like, whoa. But that is, when we get beyond the human perspective, that is what's possible.
Absolutely. And something I see a lot of as well is people who are in this community, conscious community, working on themselves, spiritually connected. A lot of us here are cycle breakers, if not all of us, cycle breakers in some. That's like what our generation or group right now feels like. It feels like we're paving the way through breaking cycles. And I feel us as spirit babies picking a side of the family we want to break cycles for. And then now we are paving the way for a completely new, clear, energetic expression for the future generations, which they can only build upon from there. Would you agree with that?
Completely. I couldn't agree more. Couldn't have said it better myself. And so many spirit babies are acknowledging that in times when I'm talking to them, where they're saying, you've started this cycle breaking, and I'm here to either continue it, or you're passing the torch to me, or I'm going to sort of take on the next phase. It's like a relay race. Like, okay, you've done this work. It's beautiful. Thank you for laying the foundation for me. Now I'm going to come in and I'm going to take the torch, and I'm going to take it forward into the future, into the next generation, and do that work from that point. Yeah. Absolutely.
I love that. I love that. And the last thing I just want to touch on before we finish up is the idea of our spirit baby being held or around the ancestors that we've lost. And so many people are like, myself included, oh, I wish my mom could have met my baby, or whatever it is. I'm not a mother, but people who we love pass before our babies come in. And I always in my readings see, oh, your dad is on the other side holding your future daughter, or whatever it is. And so can you speak a little bit to that soul group that is with us, that includes our spirit babies?
Absolutely. I love this topic. I've been talking about it a lot recently. It keeps coming up over and over again, which I love. And it just seems to be really present right now. So what I have learned surrounding this is, of course, from our human perspective, we think we have someone we love, whether it's a parent or a grandmother, an aunt or an uncle, a friend. And we picture ourselves having children and that person helping us raise our children and be a part of their lives. And that's our ideal vision. That's what we would hope for, what we would wish for. And sometimes there is this contract that exists between a soul who wants to come in and a soul who is ready to go to exit. And they essentially switch places and they pass each other. So I've been talking a lot about how people have this experience where they conceive and then their loved one passed away shortly after. It happened to me. I was conceived in March, and my mom's grandmother, my great grandmother, she was her best friend, passed away 2 months later. But my mom was on the way to tell her she was pregnant with me, and she found out she had passed away. So it's a very real phenomenon. It happens to many, many people where they go, how could this happen? I wanted them to meet them. I wanted them to be a part of their lives. And it doesn't make sense, I think, to our hearts, right? Because we just think, oh my gosh, we want them here physically. And what I've learned is that kind of the same way we were talking about before, about there's this passing of the torch, sort of this relay race that happens the same way for our loved ones and for our spirit babies as well, where they need, like, the loved one wants to be in spirit in order to support this transition of this child coming onto the earth plane, in order to support the person who's here, us, who's losing this loved one. And it's just, I don't know, I just experienced it as an exchange of energy. I think there was contracts that were set up before, like, this individual was even born, where they said, okay, when it's getting close to you being conceived, I know that I'm going to get ready to exit. Or when it comes close to you getting ready to be born, I know that my soul needs to return to source or return to spirit. And so I see that a lot, and just definitely know that. But the big question that people have is like, oh my gosh, I just wanted them to meet them. And just knowing that they're passing each other. Not only are they passing each other, but a lot of the times they're getting to spend time with each other. You know, fathers are holding daughters and mothers are holding sons and grandparents are meeting grandchildren, and they're passing forward the teachings or their love or their blessings with that soul that's coming in. I've had a lot of spirit babies tell me, like, I'm carrying a piece of grandma or I'm carrying a piece of mom. And then what you see is then the baby's born on grandma's birthday, or the baby shares a middle name with the soul who's left, and they have an intricate connection. And then that child grows up. Like for me, I never met my great grandmother because she passed obviously after I was conceived, but I've always felt such a deep connection to her. I share her name. We share a name. And I know that, and she actually came to me in a dream when I was 18 and said, I had to go out so you could come in. And she told me that. And so that happens all the time. And just know absolutely positively that your loved ones are spending time with the energy of your children before they come to meet you here. And they'll talk about it too. That's the fun part. I just had a message from a woman who said that her son, he's 12 months old, not even talking yet. And she had listened, I had spoken about what we're talking about on a podcast. She was listening to the podcast. Her son was in the room. And she said, as soon as the podcast ended, he toddled over to the coffee table where there was a picture of her mother who was in spirit, who passed away like 12 years before. And he picked up the picture and he started pointing at her, calling her like Nana, Nana, Nana. He had never used that word. He didn't, like, his other grandmother was named something else. So he did, like, where would he even get Nana from? He was recognizing her as, I know her. Like, we have a connection. This is, I know her spirit. So that's what I would say, is just knowing that they are connected. Absolutely.
I love that. And I love the part where you were saying spirit chooses significant dates to be remembered by or to come into. So passing on a certain anniversary or birthday or being born close to another passing, it's like that is not accidental. And the last thing I just want to say is I had this crazy experience where the day my mom died, my husband's best friend and wife had their baby like in the same hour. And so we got the call that my mom passed, and we got the call that the baby was born. And when I met that baby for the first time, he's so freaking cute. He was tiny, tiny, tiny. He lifted up his head when I came into the room and beamed at me. And his mom said he never does this. Like, he was like basically a newborn. He like beamed at me and opened his eyes, and that was just my sign. Like, he knew exactly where the torch was being passed.
That is amazing. Wow. That's beautiful. I got goosebumps everywhere. That's absolutely amazing. Like, what a magical moment. That's like, you can't make this stuff up.
Yeah.
You know, he was just responding to your energy coming into the room. He knew you. That's amazing.
Yeah, really special. Well, Emily, thank you so much for this beautiful, inspiring, magical conversation. Where can our listeners find you?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Beautiful flow. I love this conversation. Thank you for leading it. It was so fun for me. You can find me anywhere, pretty much anywhere, Emily the Medium. Podcast, website, Instagram. I wrote a book last year, coming up on a year of it being published. For anybody who's interested in continuing to explore this topic, it's called A Cosmic Bond, Communicating with Your Spirit Babies from Preconception to Birth. And it's kind of a preconception, pregnancy, birth, how to raise these sensitive, beautiful children. It kind of covers it all. So those are the best places to find me. And thank you again. This was really beautiful.
Amazing. Thank you so, so much. What an amazing chat with Emily the Medium. I feel so grateful and lucky to have had this conversation with her today. Definitely going to check out her book for sure. And now we're transitioning into Sitting with Spirit. So welcome. And if you're new to the podcast, this is a segment where I literally sit with spirit and give the messages from our angels, ancestors, and guides that most want to be shared for the collective good of all. Take the messages that resonate with you. This is a podcast listened to by many people. So use it as an exercise in spiritual discernment. What's for you is for you, and you will feel that resonance. And if that resonance isn't there, that's okay. Maybe just share the podcast with someone who you feel could use that message if you feel called. So I'm starting to realize that, so I sit with spirit after we record the interview, and every single week The interview primes my consciousness to be open to a spirit with either a parallel message or something thematically to do with the interview. So there was no surprise when a little boy came through in spirit today, and it was a spirit baby. And I kept seeing these little cute bunny rabbits. And I got the feeling that bunny rabbit was like an important sign, or maybe it was like a theme in the nursery that was going to happen, or like there's something with either maybe calling him a bunny rabbit or talking about bunny rabbits, but I just kept seeing these like really adorable little bunny rabbits. And then I saw that he's in spirit, and I got the feeling that he's playing with his siblings in spirit. So I feel like he has two siblings who are here in physical form, and he plays with them. They all feel very young, and he's in the house, like kind of making little things happen and playing with them. Like I just got this very much like I want to be with the other kids type of feeling from him with his siblings, which was really cute. And it feels like he definitely has a little brother, because he's talking about having an affinity for his little brother who is living. And I also saw him communicating through songs, whether you like played a certain song and I do feel like this was a miscarriage. I should have said that. I do feel like this was a spirit baby who never fully got to come to term, but that there was this deep connection while he was here, even though he never got to come to term. And there's maybe a song you would play or something you associate with him, and it feels like he sends song lyrics, music a lot as a sign. And I see him with this really old golden retriever. So I feel like there's a family dog who lived to be really old, like 13, 14, and has super long hair that turned almost like white because he was so old. And I just see him like very placidly scooting around with this spirit baby. And so I see them together in spirit, which was so freaking cute. And basically the message that this spirit baby has, which keep in mind, if you are part of this collective, these spirits come through not for an individual connection, although that can be a beautiful byproduct of these readings, is someone being like, yes, every single part of that is me. I know that's my son. They're a message more for the collective of what many spirit babies are grouping together to tell you right now, which is we are still a part of the family while in spirit. That's the message today. It's not that they can only be a part of the family if they're here in physical form. They are very much still a part of the family in spirit. And I see this spirit baby as very active. I feel like this would have happened in the last 2 years. And the last 2 years feels really significant. And I get this feeling that he's acknowledging that it's been really difficult emotionally, that his parents have been going through a lot and have a lot on their plate, and that he's very actively working to bring more light into the house, bring more light into the family. And he keeps showing me like little bunny rabbits. So pay attention to that as a sign. And the collective message is I'm still a part of the family, just not in the way you expected me to be. And I'm still very involved and sending light and protecting you so, so much. So that is so beautiful. So now I'm transitioning to a message from our angels. And it was really interesting, but they were showing me like a dunce cap. And I feel like there was something about sitting with a dunce cap on our head and not trusting our ideas, not trusting our intelligence, not trusting our vision for ourselves, and automatically going to the worst case scenario, the cynicism, the self-doubt, the looking for evidence of our shortcomings or where we're not enough. And it feels tied to inner child healing. So they showed me putting this dunce cap on the inner child, which means that your angels aren't putting it on, but it feels like that might have been a narrative in childhood that was absorbed of not trusting our ideas, not trusting our intelligence, not speaking kindly to ourselves. And I feel like this would have been witnessed and tied energetically to the mother's side of the family. They're highlighting the mother's side of the family. And I know sometimes, especially as women, our mother's voice becomes our inner dialogue. So if we either grew up with a mom who was super critical of us, we could have internalized that, or we could have watched our mother shrink herself, believe she wasn't enough, diminish her intelligence, and internalize that. So there's so many different ways this can go. But the message for the collective here is trust your vision. Trust your ideas. They are coming to you for a reason, and your angels and guides are working overtime to make sure you get them. And then you get them, and it's like you talk yourself out of them, you question them, you think you're not enough, you think you're not worthy of them. Trust your vision. So there's something here with witch wound healing, and your angels and guides are showing me putting this witch's hat of pure turquoise light on your head. And it's like a permission slip to trust your intuition, a permission slip to trust your dreams, a permission slip to trust the higher vision you hold for what's possible in your life, and to not let that crown chakra block of overthinking, second guessing, evidence of failure, evidence of scarcity consciousness zap you from the vision. Like for some reason, the phrase vision holder is coming up. And we need more vision holders. There's enough people on this earth who are focusing on what isn't working, what is difficult or tough, or are in those lower vibrational states. And I'm not talking about calling out injustice. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about victim consciousness. I'm talking about only dwelling on the negative. And we need more people in their vision holding for where we're going on the individual level, where we're up leveling, so that we as a collective can continue to hold the vision for a better earth as well. And that all distills and trickles back down to that dense cap inner child that just wants permission to take that hat off and say, yeah, I do have an idea for a book and I'm going to do it. Or yeah, I do have an idea for moving to Italy and I'm going to trust it. These ideas are not accidents. They're coming into your consciousness for a reason. Trust them, trust them, trust them. Hold the vision, because if you don't hold the vision, no one else will. And then I see a lot of updates and upgrades around home and family. So a lot of moves, a lot of house renovations, a lot of space changes. I just saw that coming up a lot. And then the family part is anybody who lives in the home or as part of your immediate family. So that seems like themes that are coming up a lot. And I see a lot of shifting foundations. I feel like some people feel like there's a lot of moving parts at once, or they feel this need for change, or the rug feels like it's being pulled out from under them. And right now feels very fluid in shaking away the parts of the vision or the parts of our experience, more like that don't lead us to the vision that we hold. So trust that whatever needs to be gone right now or shifted or shaken up is creating the foundation upon which your vision actually can be held and built from. So right now just feels, again, like this time where there's a lot of energy and flow and flux, because we're still becoming, and we're always becoming, but it feels like an extra important moment for almost this timeline shift of like shifting into a new reality, shifting into a new chapter. And right now is the foundational work so that the cherry on top can come, but we're in the foundational work right now. And that starts with home, family, foundations, body love, all of those very basic necessities that we then build from there. And through the process, no matter what comes up, hold the vision, meditate and visualize that witch's hat of turquoise light on your head, and let it clear away all the cobwebs that would try to dull your light, dim your vision, or tell you that it's not possible, because your vision is your vision for a reason. Claire, do you want to add anything?
I just love that so much, especially as a creative on a life path that can feel very uncertain. And that is all about these like creative sparks and downloads that come into your mind. It can be a little daunting sometimes to follow them, or to feel like, okay, that's an idea, but how do I make that happen? Or it can feel like a huge path ahead to follow it. And I think it really is so much about like trusting that that creative spark landed within you for a reason. Trusting that that idea came to you because it wants to be birthed through you, and not getting too daunted in the details.
Yes, and that's a beautiful correlation between the episode and the message, which is sparks of ideas are their own form of spirit baby that want to be birthed through you. And many times in my readings, I don't connect with the spirit baby itself. Their angels who I'm connecting with show me the symbol of a baby, which tells me something new wants to be born through them, wants to be mothered through them. And that can be an actual baby. It can be a rebirthed new version of self. It can be an idea. It can be a business. It can be a project. So we give birth to many different things. And I love the idea that thoughts and ideas and inspiration doesn't always come from an internal source, but an external one that's wanting to co-create with us. And we're the exact frequency that spark of thought or idea needs to be birthed into the world. And I think Elizabeth Gilbert talks about this in the book Big Magic. I mean, I read that so freaking long ago, but I remember it being such an amazing book. And she was saying that if you don't choose to co-create with that spark, it will go to someone else and someone else will. So there's also this, and I'm not comparing this to spirit babies because I think ideas are maybe a little bit more transient than like souls that are attached to us, of course. But with ideas, it's like, don't sleep on your ideas because you're the exact frequency needed right now to at least create the groundwork and the foundation to support it. And even if you don't know how to do it yet, what's taking up energetic space in your life that needs to go now that can create at least space for more answers to come through? And so I love that idea of just these imagination downloads being a major way that our guides speak to us. And sometimes bigger collective of spirit guides wants to move humanity forward by introducing certain concepts or creative ideas. And how do you think they do that? Through artists who create movies, who create art, who create whatever it is, thought leaders, whoever, and people get on, and like throughout history, before even the internet, different cultures and civilizations get on certain thought levels at the same time in history. And things evolve collectively because there's a bigger spiritual force at play. So I feel so honored when I have those downloads or ideas of things to share because it shows that spirit's working through you to progress humanity's consciousness and that you're a vessel for that. So when an idea comes to you in that full body way, it often has a sense of urgency where it's like, oh, I need to talk about this, or I need to create this, or I need to write this down. That little extra pizzazz shows you that you're getting a little push from your guide. So I love that so much.
Yeah, I resonate with that so much. I've definitely had moments where I think you create the space to co-create with spirit. And then sometimes these creative impulses come through and you'll make something and you think, where did that come from? How did I come up with that? And I think it's because it didn't just come from inside of you. It was like a connection with an idea and a concept of spirit that utilized you as the vessel to bring it into the world. What a magical way to look at creativity.
Absolutely. And so if you are someone who either doesn't have kids or don't want kids, or spirit babies aren't your chosen way of birthing life into the world, your creative projects, your new version of self, there's so many other things we birth into the world in this phase of our evolution. So beautiful. Thank you everyone so much for listening. Life is too short not to be magical, my loves. So hold the vision, hold the vision. Much love, and we will see you next week.
For more information on Taylor and her work, go to angelsandamethyst.com or connect with her on Instagram at angels_and_amethyst. She is the one verified account with this name and will never DM you for a reading. If you have any questions about intuition, spirituality, angels, or anything and everything magical, please email contact@magichourpod.com. We will answer listener questions once a month in our solo episodes. Are you an aligned business owner that would like to advertise to our beautiful hummingbird community? Please email contact@magichourpod.com. Make sure you're subscribing to Magic Hour so you never miss the magic. And don't forget to leave us 5 sparkling star reviews. They help more magical people find the pod. Please screenshot and email your 5-star reviews to contact@magichourpod.com. And we will send you a free downloadable angelic meditation and enter you to win an angel reading with Taylor Paige. The next giveaway will happen when we hit 111 5-star reviews.
Thank you for listening to Magic Hour with Taylor Paige.